know this list will generate many emotions for victims who have suffered terribly. For their suffering, I am truly sorry.
Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio releasing a video message on the same day the names of clergy credibly accused of sexual abuse against minors is published. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The list was released on Friday. Now priests and parishioners are speaking out about the painful revelations. For more on what's being said and what's revealed in the list, Currents News' Emily Drewby is here. Emily.
Liz, today I spoke with several priests and parishioners within the Diocese of Brooklyn. Many tell me they're shocked and hurt by the list, but also encouraged by the transparency the Brooklyn Diocese showed by releasing it.
I think it's important that the diocese has done this.
I'm happy that the church and the diocese is doing the best they can to be as open and sincere about responding to the people in their hurt.
Priests across the Brooklyn Diocese also speaking out after the list of clergy credibly accused of sexual abuse against minors was released.
It has a little bit of an impact here because 7 of the priests that are on the list were assigned here at one point. So it has taken a little bit of breath out of the parish.
It's tough. You know, it's tough to see something like this. But I pray for my brothers, and we pray that the Lord will continue to strengthen us.
The full list can be found on the Diocese of Brooklyn's website, dioceseofbrooklyn.org, by clicking on a special page made for the clergy sex abuse crisis response. There's also a video statement by Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio.
I have met with many victims who have told me that more than anything, they want an acknowledgement of what was done to them.
The list covers the 166-year history of the diocese. There are 108 names, 1 auxiliary bishop, 2 deacons, and 105 priests. Less than 5% of clergy throughout the history of the Diocese of Brooklyn since 1853. The list a shock for many.
You know, these are priests that I've lived with. These are priests that I've ministered with. These are priests who are friends. So it is kind of disheartening. We will be stronger because of it, and I think that's what we can come forth with.
Almost 2/3 of the accused clergy on the list are dead. Numbers show incidents of abuse peaked in the 1960s and 1970s, but most reports came in after both 2002, when the Dallas Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People was enacted, and 2017, after the Brooklyn Diocese started the Independent Reconciliation and Compensation Program, which works to provide healing and closure for survivors of clergy sexual abuse. Priests we spoke with say they hope the list being released will help the victims move forward, heal, and recognize that those on the list will never be able to do anything like this again to another person. They also commend Bishop DiMarzio for his very clear stance of a zero-tolerance policy. Liz?
Thank you so much for that report, Emily. By publishing the names, Bishop DiMarzio fulfilled a pledge he made during his regional meetings with the lay faithful in Brooklyn and Queens last year. But that's not the only thing the bishop has done over the years to prevent and stop abuse. Currents News' Tim HARFMANN reports.
The clergy list is the latest step the diocese is taking to protect children and help survivors. But for years, the church in Brooklyn and Queens and Bishop DiMarzio have been very active in combating the scourge of abuse. He held regional meetings with the faithful in both boroughs last year. That's when he pledged to release the names of clergy credibly accused of abuse. In each of the 4 sessions, he answered every question that anyone wanted to ask. As part of his zero-tolerance policy, the bishop established an independent reporting telephone number that's linked directly to the district attorney's office for investigation. The diocese also has the Safe Environment Office, run by MARYELLEN QUINN. She is in charge of training programs that prevent abuse.
The diocese is required to train and screen all adults who have access to children, and we are also required to instruct our children.
We're just going to call those private parts of our bodies that we need to keep clean, safe, and protected the bathing suit zone.
According to Quinn, so far 60,000 children are instructed each year on how to identify and report abuse, and 82,000 adults, including clergy and lay people, have been taught to be on the lookout for signs of abuse.
You can protect some of God's children in just what you learn in this class tonight.
Jasmine SALAZAR is the diocese's vice chancellor and victim assistance coordinator.
The diocese is heavily involved in outreach to victims and providing assistance to victims who were abused as minors by a member of the clergy.
That includes therapy and the annual Mass of Hope and Healing, organized by abuse survivors. The Independent Reconciliation and Compensation Program started in 2017 to compensate survivors as a means of healing and closure. When the list of clergy was released Friday, Bishop DiMarzio also put out a video to communicate with the faithful.
In the past 17 years, there have been 2 credible cases involving active diocesan clergy in the Diocese of Brooklyn. While even one is too many, this shows that we are on the right path to ensuring these horrendous acts of abuse are never repeated.
Anthony Hughes is a survivor who says he was ignored when he first reported being abused to the church, but there's been a big change under Bishop DiMarzio.
They always return your call. They always are there for you when times are really tough. They've never turned their back on me in the last few years.
As the Independent Reconciliation and Compensation Program wraps up, Bishop DiMarzio says the diocese is committed to continuing to assist victims and will conduct a private compensation program for those who wish to participate. Outside of diocesan headquarters, Tim Harfmann, Currents News.
Well, joining me now is Anthony Hughes to talk more about the list of credibly accused priests. Anthony, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your taking the time. We just watched Tim's package. You are a survivor of sexual abuse, and you're also a member of the Diocese Survivors Advisory Committee. Please share your story.
My story obviously was I was a victim of abuse by a priest back in the 80s and early 90s. I would guess you don't remember those dates too well.
Of course not. Was it something that began right away? Were you able to identify immediately that this was not right?
No,
Okay.
it hides. There's something, once it happens, you forget it. You don't want to realize that some trauma had happened to you. And growing up from a very poor family, the priest was very helpful to my family. So he was like Jesus Christ entering our home at the time.
And it seems that that's the tie that binds, that there's this trust factor that is betrayed. When you finally realized what was happening, what was your first recourse?
My first recourse, I was scared.
Okay.
Frightened, nervous. You don't know who to turn to because you don't think that anybody's going to believe what had taken place at the time.
We talk a lot about healing after these horrific events. Explain to me, what does that process look like for you personally?
Wow, healing is very tough. You know, I've had doors slammed in my face because I had turned back to the Catholic Church after I realized something had happened in my 20s. I had turned back, and doors were actually slammed in my face telling me, well, he's dead, there's nothing you can do about it any longer. So healing was a long journey.
So you play an active role in helping the diocese kind of put these pieces together and help survivors like yourself and help people like me and our viewers understand. How has that process been for you?
Actually, what I do is every once in a while I get a call to speak to another victim on how to deal or try to cope with what's happening and explain what the church is now offering to help get through the disaster that they've been through.
Anthony, we now have a list of priests credibly accused of abuse. Just in the simplest terms, how do you feel about that?
I always have mixed thoughts on that because people who have not come forward, it can actually bring up some bad memories and some bad feelings. And people that it has helped realize now, okay, that this is what's happening, and now the church is not hiding and is now turning the corner to help as much as they can with the names of the priests that were brought out. It does help survivors, but I think people that are victims still, it's going to take some real time.
Where do we go from here, though? We have the lists, we see what our diocese is doing, we see what other dioceses are trying to do. Where would you like to see it go from here?
What we need to do, we need to educate our current priest to not turn their back on any victim or any survivor that needs to speak. They need to listen to us, they need to hear us, and they need to pray with us and continue along with our journey. It's important they put into their everyday life our journey as well, because their prayers are going to continue to help us.
What are your trust issues like for current priests now in the diocese?
I trust them. I mean, I've been around quite a few of them, and they're all on the same page with us. They're doing the right job, and I don't think they're going to cross those lines.
All right. Anthony, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us, and your courage inspires me.
My pleasure.
I look forward to speaking with you a lot more during this process.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Diocese of Brooklyn's website now has a special section where people can go to get all the information in one place. It includes the newly released clergy list as well as videos and resources. Go to dioceseofbrooklyn.org and on the home page, click on Clergy Sex Abuse Crisis Response. The toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line you heard about in Tim's report is 888-634-4499.